The crack of rifle fire echoed across the valley, each shot a death sentence delivered with surgical precision. Through the static-filled radio transmission, panicked voices cut through the Afghan heat. "Contact! Contact! We're taking fire from multiple positions." "We've got a sniper! Where the hell is he?" "Man down! We need immediate medevac." At Fort Bragg, North Carolina, the transmission from Afghanistan blared through the operations center speakers. Senior officers gathered around tactical displays, faces grim as the situation deteriorated half a world away. 600 yards from this nerve center of America's military might, Master Sergeant Rachel Morgan limped across the sun-baked training grounds, her left leg dragging noticeably with each labored step. The worn khaki uniform hung loose on her frame, concealing the advanced medical brace that barely kept her upright. 6 months at the base, and still the stares followed her everywhere, some curious, most dismissive. Lieutenant Jason Walker's laughter cut through the morning air like a combat knife. 200 pounds of muscle and arrogance wrapped in tactical gear, he stood surrounded by his SEAL team members, their tridents gleaming in the Carolina sun. "Hey, Gimpy!" Chief Petty Officer James Ramirez shouted, his voice carrying the kind of contempt usually reserved for enemy combatants. "Why don't you hobble back to the supply depot and count bullets? Combat zones aren't playgrounds for cripples." Rachel didn't break stride, didn't turn. The mockery was a familiar weight, no heavier than the constant pain that radiated from her shattered leg. She adjusted the folder of intelligence reports clutched against her chest and continued her painful journey toward the command center. Walker stepped into her path, his hand resting casually on his sidearm. Intelligence from a desk jockey who can't even walk straight. His smile was sharp and mocking. "Turn around, sweetheart. Leave the real work to those of us who can actually fight." Rachel finally looked up, her dark eyes locking onto Walker's with an intensity that killed his laughter for just a moment. Something flickered in those eyes, something cold and calculating that made the hair on his neck stand up. But it passed quickly. She simply stepped around him and continued her painful journey. What none of them knew was that within 24 hours, the radio would scream words that would freeze their blood and shatter every assumption they'd made about the limping woman they'd dismissed as worthless. Fort Benning, Georgia, 1991. The aftermath of Operation Desert Storm. "Breathing is the foundation of marksmanship," Captain William Carter's weathered voice carried across the firing range. At 58, his frame remained ramrod straight, his eyes sharp beneath steel-gray hair. When you pull that trigger, you exist between heartbeats, between breaths. 22-year-old Rachel Morgan lay prone behind an M24 sniper weapon system, her breathing controlled to mathematical precision. Her spotter called wind adjustments, but she had already factored them in, along with barometric pressure, humidity, and the minute spin drift of the bullet's trajectory. The shot cracked through the Georgia heat. 1,000 yards downrange, the center of the target disappeared. Captain Carter knelt beside her, studying the young soldier who'd emerged as the most naturally gifted shooter he'd seen in 40 years of service. "You're not just shooting, Morgan. You're solving equations. Ballistic trajectories are just physics problems with lethal consequences." Later that evening, in his sparse office, decorated with faded photographs of Vietnam, Carter unlocked a drawer and withdrew a worn leather journal. "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room." Rachel studied her instructor carefully. William Carter wasn't just a sniper instructor. The whispers among the other trainees painted him as something else entirely. A ghost from America's shadow wars. "During the Cold War, I wasn't just Army," Carter said, his voice dropping. "Sierra program. CIA asset embedded with Special Activities Division. 32 confirmed eliminations of high-value Soviet-aligned targets across Southeast Asia, Europe, and South America." He opened the journal, revealing hand-drawn ballistic tables and operational notes. "These aren't in any field manual. This is 4 decades of knowledge earned in places America never officially operated." Rachel understood the weight of what was being offered. "Why me, sir?" Carter's eyes held hers. "Because I recognize what you are, the same thing I was. A natural-born predator with a mathematician's mind. The Army thinks they're training you. They're just giving shape to something that was already there." From that moment, Rachel Morgan's training diverged from the standard sniper curriculum. While other students learned the basics, Carter taught her the dark arts of the craft. Shooting techniques developed by KGB and Mossad operatives, counter-sniper tactics from Soviet-Afghan engagements, and psychological warfare methods classified beyond top secret. Remember, Carter told her as training concluded, a sniper's greatest weapon isn't the rifle, it's patience. The willingness to wait for the perfect moment, to endure any discomfort, to exist as nothing more than an extension of your weapon until that single instant when you make the decision to end a life. Kandahar Province, Afghanistan, 2003. Operation Enduring Freedom. The desert air shimmered with heat as Sergeant First Class Rachel Morgan and her spotter, Staff Sergeant Alex Turner, lay motionless under camouflage netting. 72 hours in position, subsisting on water and energy bars, relieving themselves in bags to avoid movement. Their target, Abdullah Masood, a high-ranking al-Qaeda commander responsible for coordinating attacks against coalition forces. Wind shifted. 3 knots right to left, Turner whispered, his voice barely audible even inches from Rachel's ear. His experienced eyes read the subtle movements of dust and heat waves through his spotting scope. Accounting for it, Rachel replied, her mind calculating adjustments. The M24 had become an extension of her body, the wooden stock worn smooth from years of service. Through her scope, she watched the compound where intelligence placed their target. The range, 1 to 275 meters, at the outer edge of the weapon's effective range. Target confirmed, Turner breathed as a figure emerged from the building. Positive ID on Masood. Rachel's world contracted to the view through her scope. Her breathing slowed, heart rate dropping to 40 beats per minute, a technique Carter had taught her, borrowed from Soviet snipers. Send it when ready, Turner whispered. Between heartbeats, between breaths, her fingers squeezed. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. 1 second later, 275 meters away, Abdullah Masood collapsed. The 7.62mm match-grade round had entered through his left eye socket. Target down, Rachel reported coolly, already preparing to move. Confirm. Turner's voice held quiet awe. Confirmed kill. Shadowhawk delivers again. The mission extraction went perfectly until the final phase. 10 kilometers from their pickup point, the Humvee convoy hit an IED. The explosion flipped the lead vehicle, Turner's body shielding Rachel from the worst of the blast. When she regained consciousness, her left leg was a mangled mess of blood and shredded tissue. Turner lay unmoving beside her, his chest catastrophically torn open. "Stay with me," Rachel screamed, applying pressure to wounds she knew were fatal. "Alex, stay with me." Her last memory before the medevac arrived was of Turner's eyes, already fixed and empty, staring at the Afghan sky. At Walter Reed Medical Center, the surgeon delivered the news with clinical detachment. "The shrapnel missed your femoral artery by 3 millimeters. You're lucky to be alive." Lucky. As if there was anything fortunate about watching your spotter die while you lay helpless, your sniper rifle thrown 20 feet away by the blast. "Will I walk again?" Rachel asked, though she already knew the answer from the surgeon's expression. "With extensive rehabilitation and a specialized brace, yes. But your military career as you knew it is over. The nerve damage is permanent." 2 months later, a brigadier general visited her room, closing the door before speaking. Officially, Shadowhawk died in that IED blast, along with Staff Sergeant Turner. "I'm very much alive, sir," Rachel replied, her voice hollow. "For security reasons, we're keeping it that way. Your record, 312 confirmed eliminations of high-value targets, makes you a priority target for every terrorist organization we're fighting. This," he gestured to her leg, "gives us an opportunity to protect you. By erasing me. By giving you a new assignment, intelligence analysis at Fort Bragg. Your experience, your pattern recognition skills, they're still valuable, even if you can't deploy." Rachel looked down at her damaged leg, then at the framed photo of Turner on her bedside table. "When do I start?" Fort Bragg, present day. Rachel's quarters were Spartan. A bed, a desk covered with intelligence reports, and a wall filled with maps of Afghanistan's Kunar province. 6 months of painstaking analysis had revealed a pattern that no one else had noticed. The knock at her door was unexpected. When she opened it, Sergeant Major Michael Davis stood in the hallway, his 62-year-old frame still solid after decades of service. His weathered face betrayed nothing, but his eyes held recognition. "Supply depot requires inventory verification," he said formally, then lowered his voice. "Your hands. The way you field-stripped that M4 yesterday? No supply clerk moves like that." Rachel's expression remained neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about, Sergeant Major." Davis produced a worn photograph. A small group of soldiers in Vietnam-era uniforms. A much younger William Carter stood in the center. "I served with Bill Carter, 5th Special Forces Group, before his other assignments. He had a certain way of teaching. I recognized it in you immediately." Rachel's mask slipped, just for an instant. "You knew Carter?" "I was his spotter for 3 years, before your time." Davis glanced at the maps on her wall. "Those intelligence reports you've been trying to get command to read? Show me." Rachel hesitated, then retrieved her folder. 7 highly trained snipers operating in Sector 9. Not Taliban. Their tactics are too sophisticated. Shots at ranges beyond Taliban capabilities, with precision that suggests formal military training. Davis studied the maps, the documented kill patterns. "You think they're Russian?" "Former Spetsnaz working as contractors. They've been systematically eliminating our forward observers and intelligence assets. And tomorrow, Walker's SEAL team is walking right into their kill zone. You tried to warn them. They won't listen to a crippled supply clerk." Davis was silent for a long moment. "Carter still maintains certain contacts. I could reach out, get confirmation of your analysis." "There's no time," Rachel replied, looking out her window at the SEAL team preparing for deployment. "They leave at 0600. The next morning, chaos erupted across Fort Bragg. Rachel was in the supply depot when the first transmission came through from Walker's team. "Contact, heavy sniper fire. Taking casualties." The desperate radio calls continued as Rachel made her way toward the command center. Each step sent pain shooting through her damaged leg. But she pushed forward, her face set in determination. In the operations center, Colonel Bennett directed the quick reaction force preparation. Through the static-filled transmission, Walker's voice had lost its arrogance, replaced by the raw edge of fear. "We've got 2 KIA, 3 wounded. We're pinned down in a horseshoe ambush with overlapping fields of fire." Rachel burst through the doors. "Grid coordinates 38 Tango 235471, she announced. "They're in a classic Spetsnaz crossfire setup, 7 shooters positioned along the ridgeline." Every head turned toward her. Captain Morris, the operations officer, physically pushed her toward the exit. "This is a tactical emergency. We don't need supply clerks interfering." "You don't understand," Rachel insisted, holding her ground despite the pain. "Your QRF will fly into the same trap if they take the direct approach. The shooters have established interlocking fields of fire covering all obvious insertion points." Colonel Bennett's eyes narrowed. "How could you possibly know their exact positions?" Before Rachel could answer, Davis appeared in the doorway. "Sir, I've just received confirmation from intelligence assets. Morgan's assessment matches their analysis. These aren't Taliban fighters, they're ex-Spetsnaz professionals." Bennett hesitated, torn between protocol and the urgency of the situation. Walker's voice crackled through the radio again. "Where the hell is our support? We're being picked apart here." Rachel made her decision. Without waiting for permission, she limped toward the door. "I need access to the armory." "Morgan!" Bennett called after her. "What are you planning?" She didn't turn back. "What I was trained to do." Sergeant Mitchell guarded the armory entrance with the serious expression of a young soldier who believed his assignment was vital to national security. "Authorized personnel only," he recited as Rachel approached. "Weapons are for combat personnel, not supply clerks." Davis appeared behind her. "Son, I'm pulling rank. Open the door." Mitchell hesitated. "Sir, regulations state—" "Those men are dying," Rachel interrupted, her voice carrying an edge that made Mitchell step back involuntarily. "Every second we waste, another bullet finds its mark." Something in her eyes made Mitchell reconsider. He unlocked the door without another word. Inside, Rachel moved with focused precision despite her limp. She bypassed the modern rifles, heading straight for a locked cabinet in the back. M24, she told Davis. Match-grade ammunition, FLIR thermal scope, rangefinder. Davis retrieved the equipment as Sofia Rodriguez, the combat medic who'd befriended Rachel months earlier, entered the armory with a medical kit. Whatever you're doing, you won't last an hour with that leg, Sofia said, opening her case to reveal a specialized auto-injector. Experimental nerve blocker, military medical trials, temporarily restores function to damaged neural pathways. Rachel nodded her understanding. Side effects? Increased nerve damage when it wears off. Possible permanent exacerbation of your condition. Sophia's eyes were solemn. Once is manageable, twice is risky, 3 times. She left the sentence unfinished. Do it, Rachel said, rolling up her sleeve. As Sophia administered the injection, Davis assembled the sniper rifle with practiced hands. I made a call, he said quietly. Carter is on a secure line from his ranch in Montana. He's reviewing your intelligence analysis now. Rachel felt the medication spread through her system, the constant pain receding for the first time in 2 years. She flexed her leg experimentally, finding strength where there had been only weakness. Carter confirms your assessment, Davis continued, handing her the M24. But there's something else. The pattern. The methodology. He thinks he recognizes the shooter. Rachel checked the rifle's action, the familiar routine coming back as if she'd never stopped. Who? Nikolai Petrov, former Spetsnaz commander. Disappeared after the Chechen conflict, rumored to have gone mercenary. The name hit Rachel like a physical blow. Petrov is dead. Hellfire strike in Kandahar, 2008. Davis's expression remained grim. Carter doesn't think so, and there's something else. Petrov was running operations in your old sector in 2003, when Turner was killed. The implication hung in the air between them. This wasn't just a random engagement. It was personal. Rachel chambered around, her decision made. I need a spotter. Davis picked up the spotting scope. Been a while, but I remember how. The North Tower was the tallest structure on Fort Bragg's perimeter, offering commanding views of the surrounding training grounds. It also required climbing 6 flights of stairs, a seemingly impossible task for someone with Rachel's injuries under normal circumstances. With the nerve blocker in her system, she took the steps 2 at a time, the rifle case slung across her back. Davis followed, carrying the additional equipment. How long? She asked Sophia, who monitored her vitals as they climbed. 45 minutes at most before it starts to wear off, the medic replied. After that, the pain will return worse than before. At the observation deck, Rachel set up with practiced efficiency. She unrolled the shooting mat, positioned the rifle, and adjusted the bipod. Through the scope, she could see the valley where Walker's team had taken cover. They were in a natural depression, good protection from direct fire, but surrounded by high ground. A perfect killing field. Davis set up the spotting scope, his movements betraying decades of experience despite his age. Conditions? Humidity 62%, temperature 89 Fahrenheit, barometric pressure 29.92 inches mercury, Rachel replied automatically, scanning the ridgeline for threats. Range to target area approximately 1,800 meters, Davis confirmed. Wind variable 5 to 8 knots, shifting from northwest to northeast. Rachel spotted the first shooter almost immediately, a barely visible disturbance in the rocks, around 700 meters out. Only someone trained to look for such signs would have noticed. The sniper was good. Very good. Target 1 identified, Ridgeline Alpha, behind the split rock formation, she said, making minute adjustments to her scope. Davis located the position in his spotting scope. Confirmed. Range 1,710 meters, wind holding at 6 knots from the right. Rachel's world contracted to the view through her scope. Her breathing slowed, her heart rate dropped. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger. She became what Carter had trained her to be. Not a person, but a weapon system. Send it when ready, Davis whispered, echoing the words Turner had spoken on her last mission. Between heartbeats, between breaths, Rachel squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. 1.5 seconds later, the hidden sniper slumped forward, his rifle sliding from lifeless fingers. Through her headset, she could hear the SEAL team's confusion. What the hell? Someone just took out a sniper position. One down, Rachel confirmed, already working the bolt to chamber another round. Moving to target 2. For the next 12 minutes, Rachel systematically eliminated the enemy snipers. Each shot was a complex calculation of distance, wind, humidity, and the Coriolis effect of the Earth's rotation. Each kill required absolute precision. The fifth target proved more challenging, a concealed position 1,030 meters out, at the extreme range of the M24's capabilities. As she prepared for the shot, she caught a glimpse of the sniper adjusting position. "I have visual confirmation," she whispered. "It's Petrov." Davis's sharp intake of breath was audible. "You're certain?" Rachel's finger hesitated on the trigger. "I'd know him anywhere. He was observing our position the day Turner died. Same rifle setup. SVD Dragunov with custom stock." "Take the shot," Davis urged. But Petrov had already detected the threat. His position shifted, and the shot that would have taken his head merely grazed his shoulder. He disappeared into the rocks, wounded but alive. The sixth shooter fell moments later, and the SEAL team began extracting their wounded. The QRF approached from an alternate route, guided by Rachel's directions to avoid the killing field. Only Petrov remained, hidden somewhere in the rocky terrain. Rachel knew he wouldn't retreat, not when he'd recognized her shooting pattern. This had become personal. "Time's running out," Sophia warned. "Medication levels dropping. 20 minutes at most." Rachel felt the first tendrils of pain returning to her leg. "I need to finish this." Over the radio, Walker's voice had regained some of its confidence. "QRF has us. 4 minutes to extraction. Whoever our guardian angel is, we owe you." Rachel keyed her microphone for the first time. "Just get your men out, Lieutenant." There was a moment of stunned silence before Walker replied, "That voice? Morgan, the supply clerk?" "Save it for later," she answered, scanning the ridgeline for any sign of Petrov. The secure line on Davis's satellite phone chirped. He answered, listened, then handed it to Rachel. "It's Carter." "I'm a little busy, Captain," Rachel said, not taking her eye from the scope. Carter's voice was strong despite his age. "Petrov has a pattern, always has. After 5 shots, he changes position completely, moves at least 300 meters laterally, usually to higher ground. He'll want eyes on the extraction point." Rachel adjusted her scope, scanning the higher peaks. "Nothing. He knows you're hunting him now. He'll use terrain masking, approach from your blind spot. What's directly behind the extraction zone from your perspective?" Rachel shifted her attention to the landing zone where the helicopters would arrive. Behind it stood a small copse of trees, casting long shadows in the afternoon sun. "Tree line," she replied. 800 meters from the LZ. Perfect concealment, clear shot at the helicopters when they land." "That's where he'll be," Carter confirmed, "but he'll expect a conventional counter-sniper approach." Rachel remembered her training with Carter, the unorthodox techniques he'd taught her. "The reflection shot. You remember." The pride in Carter's voice was evident. "Soviet technique. Use a reflective surface to create a false target, make the sniper reveal his position." The helicopters were approaching, 2 Black Hawks sweeping in low across the valley. Rachel spotted a water canteen abandoned by the fleeing enemy fighters, its metal surface catching the sun. "I have a reflector," she confirmed. 800 meters, just outside the tree line." Davis understood immediately. If he's there, he'll see the glint. Think it's a scope reflection. Rachel made her adjustments. The pain was returning now, making her hands tremble slightly. She controlled her breathing, forced the pain into a compartment in her mind. "Helicopters 30 seconds from touchdown," Davis reported. Rachel fired. The bullet struck the metal canteen, creating a flash of reflected sunlight. 2 seconds later, a muzzle flash erupted from the tree line as Petrov fired at what he thought was an enemy sniper. It was all Rachel needed. Her second shot covered the 1,500 meters to the tree line in just over a second, catching Petrov in his exposed position. Through her scope, she watched him fall, his rifle dropping from his hands. Target eliminated, she confirmed, her voice clinical despite the emotions churning beneath. LZ secure, complete extraction. As she spoke, the pain returned in full force, the nerve blocker wearing off entirely. Rachel collapsed beside the rifle, her legs seized in agony beyond anything she'd experienced before. Sophia was immediately at her side, administering emergency painkillers. "We need to get her to medical now." Davis gathered the equipment as two base security personnel, drawn by the rifle shots, burst onto the observation deck. Their expressions shifted from alarm to confusion as they saw Sergeant Major Davis and the limping supply clerk they'd barely noticed for months. "Call the medical team," Davis ordered, "and inform Colonel Bennett that Shadowhawk sends her regards." Rachel awoke in the base hospital, the familiar antiseptic smell bringing back memories of Walter Reed. Sophia stood beside her bed, checking her vital signs. "Welcome back," the medic said. "You've been out for 18 hours. Rachel tried to move her left leg and was rewarded with blinding pain. Damage assessment? Severe neural inflammation. Increased pressure on your sciatic nerve? Sophia's expression was professionally neutral, but her eyes betrayed concern. "The nerve blocker did exactly what I warned it would." "Worth it," Rachel replied, looking toward the window. "The SEAL team? 2 KIA. 3 wounded but stable." Sophia adjusted the pain medication drip. "They're calling it a miracle. 7 enemy snipers eliminated by a single shooter at extreme range." The door opened, and Colonel Bennett entered, followed by Davis. The colonel's face was a mask of professional neutrality, but his eyes held a mixture of awe and regret. "Master Sergeant Morgan," he began formally. "Or should I say Shadowhawk?" Rachel attempted to sit straighter, military bearing asserting itself despite her condition. "Master Sergeant Morgan is fine, sir." Bennett nodded, then did something unexpected. He pulled a chair close to her bed and sat, bringing himself to eye level with her. "I owe you an apology, Sergeant." "We all do." He placed a folder on her bed, her intelligence analysis that had been dismissed repeatedly over the past months. "Davis has briefed me on your background. 312 confirmed eliminations of high-value targets, the most successful sniper in modern American military history." 319 now, Davis corrected quietly. Bennett continued. "Pentagon confirms your assessment was correct. The snipers were former Spetsnaz operators working as contractors for a terrorist cell. Their leader, Nikolai Petrov, had been presumed dead since 2008. Rachel's expression remained neutral. "What happens now?" "That depends on you." Bennett retrieved another folder from his jacket. "These are options from the Joint Chiefs. Option 1, medical retirement with full honors, Purple Heart, and Distinguished Service Cross for yesterday's action." Rachel waited silently. "Option 2, reinstatement to active duty as an intelligence analyst with your former rank and clearance level." "And option 3, Rachel asked, knowing there would be more. Bennett smiled slightly. Option 3 was actually Carter's suggestion. A new training program. Advanced sniper tactics and counter-sniper operations. You'd develop the curriculum and oversee training. Before Rachel could respond, the door opened again. Lieutenant Walker entered, his arm in a sling from a shrapnel wound. Behind him stood Chief Ramirez, his usually confident demeanor subdued. Walker approached the bed, his eyes meeting Rachel's directly. Without a word, he lowered himself to one knee beside her bed. "You saved us all," he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm sorry for everything." Ramirez stepped forward, holding out his hand. In his palm lay his seal, trident insignia. "This belongs to warriors," he said quietly. "Real warriors, like you." Rachel didn't take it. "Keep it, Chief. You earned it. Just remember that courage comes in many forms." Ramirez nodded, understanding the deeper message. He returned the trident to his uniform. "The men would like to meet you," Walker said. "When you're ready. To thank you properly." After they left, Rachel turned back to Colonel Bennett. Option 3, she said decisively. But with conditions. Davis joins as an instructor. His spotting experience is invaluable, and I want Carter brought in as a consultant. Bennett nodded. Anything else? Rachel looked toward the window, where she could see soldiers training on the grounds below. I need full access to intelligence on all remaining members of Petrov's network. This isn't over. He wasn't operating alone. Agreed, Bennett replied, standing. Rest up, Shadowhawk. Your next mission begins soon. 6 months later, the Shadowhawk Combat Marksmanship Program had become the most prestigious sniper training course in the U.S. military. Rachel supervised from a specially designed wheelchair on bad days and with her customized leg brace on good ones. The firing range at Fort Bragg had been modified to her specifications, with targets out to 2,000 meters. Today's class included 20 selected students from various special operations units, including 4 from Walker's SEAL team. At the observation platform, Rachel stood with the assistance of her brace, watching the trainees through binoculars. Beside her, Davis called wind conditions while Carter, now 79 but still sharp-eyed, evaluated shooting positions. Martinez is anticipating recoil, Carter noted, observing one of the SEAL team members. His shots are consistently low left. I'll work with him after the session, Rachel agreed, making a note in her tablet. The class had another observer today, a young Army specialist in a wheelchair, recently returned from Afghanistan with injuries similar to Rachel's. He watched the training with hungry eyes, a man seeking purpose after loss. During the lunch break, he approached Rachel hesitantly. Sergeant Morgan? I'm Specialist Thomas Harris. They said I might be able to talk with you. Rachel recognized the look in his eyes, the same emptiness she'd carried after Turner's death. Walk with me, she said, then smiled slightly at her choice of words. Or roll, as the case may be. As they moved along the edge of the range, Harris spoke of his injury, the IED that had taken his right leg and 2 of his squad mates. They say I'll never deploy again, that my career is effectively over. Rachel stopped at the firing line, picking up one of the training rifles. What was your MOS? Scout sniper, ma'am. Not in your league, but I qualified expert. She handed him the rifle. Show me. Harris looked confused, but took the weapon, checking it with practiced hands despite his seated position. Rachel set up a spotting scope, pointing to a target 800 meters distant. Whenever you're ready, she said. Harris settled the rifle across his wheelchair armrests, adjusting his position to compensate for his missing leg. His breathing slowed, his focus narrowed. The shot cracked across the range, hitting 2 inches from center. Not bad, Rachel commented. Again. 5 shots later, Harris had tightened his grouping to less than an inch. Rachel nodded, satisfied. The program needs assistant instructors, she said. Your injury doesn't affect your eye, your trigger control, or your ability to teach. Hope flickered in Harris's eyes for the first time. You're offering me a position? I'm offering you purpose, Rachel corrected. The rest is up to you. Later that afternoon, as the day's training concluded, Walker approached Rachel as she reviewed performance metrics. He'd become a regular visitor to the program, his initial shame transformed into genuine respect. The men are improving, he noted, watching his team pack up their equipment. They're learning, Rachel agreed. Not just how to shoot, but how to think, how to analyze. She turned to face him directly. How to see beyond the surface. Walker nodded, understanding the deeper message. I've been meaning to ask, why Shadowhawk? Where did the name come from? Rachel smiled slightly. Carter gave it to me, said I had the patience of a shadow and the eyes of a hawk. Her expression grew more serious. It belonged to another life. And now? Now I'm just Rachel Morgan, instructor. She glanced at Harris, who was already helping another disabled veteran adjust his shooting position. And occasionally, finder of lost souls. As the range cleared, Davis approached with a secured satellite phone. Call from Pentagon Intelligence, he said quietly. They've located another of Petrov's associates, Syria, operating with ISIS-affiliated groups. Rachel took the phone, listening intently to the briefing. When the call ended, her expression was resolute. What is it? Walker asked, recognizing the look. A mission, she replied. Critical target, extreme range. She glanced down at her damaged leg. They need Shadowhawk one more time. Davis and Carter exchanged glances. Your leg won't handle another deployment, Carter warned. I don't need to deploy, Rachel replied. Just get me to the Turkish border. There's a mountain overlook with line of sight to the target area. Walker stepped forward. My team can provide security and extraction. Rachel studied him for a long moment, measuring his sincerity. This isn't a redemption mission, Lieutenant. No, he agreed. It's just operators supporting operators, like it always should have been. As preparations began, Carter took Rachel aside, pressing something into her hand. It was an old combat knife, its handle worn smooth from decades of use. Carried this through 3 wars, the old sniper said quietly. Vietnam. Cold War operations no one knows about. Desert Storm. Rachel recognized its value immediately. I can't take this. You're not taking it, you're carrying it forward. Carter's weathered face was solemn. What we do, what we know, it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the mission, to the country, to those who come after us. Rachel closed her hand around the knife, feeling the weight of legacy. I understand. That evening, as she packed her gear for the mission, she placed Carter's knife alongside her own equipment. Beside it, she laid Turner's dog tags, carried with her since his death. Outside her window, she could see Harris working with a group of wounded veterans, teaching them modified shooting positions adapted to their injuries. New purpose blooming from devastation, life continuing after loss. Rachel Morgan checked her custom M24 one last time, her movements precise despite the pain that had become her constant companion. Shadowhawk would fly again, not for vengeance but for justice. Not for herself, but for those who couldn't fight back. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about capability and responsibility, about using the skills she'd been given regardless of the cost. Between heartbeats, between breaths, she made her peace with what she was. Not broken, not diminished, but transformed. The limping woman they'd mocked had become something more than the intact soldier she'd once been. A teacher, a legend. A reminder that true strength is measured not in physical perfection, but in the willingness to continue despite imperfection. Shadowhawk didn't miss. And somewhere across the world, that certainty would save lives. The mission awaited. The circle would close. And when it was done, she would return to continue building what mattered most. Not just her legacy, but the future of those who would carry it forward when she was gone. Between heartbeats. Between breaths. The predator prepared to hunt one last time.